In this video, we're going to go through a tutorial of applying test data automation to Gherkin. Firstly, we need to create a catalog. In this tutorial, we're going to be using Excel as the primary driver for our allocations and loading test data. However, this could just as well be using SQL Server or any of the other 100+ technologies that we can connect to from our test data automation toolset. So we're going to come into Test Modeler here, and the first thing we're going to do is create a new data catalog. So we've just gone into Test Data Management Allocation, and we'll click on the New Catalog button. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to come in and we're going to give this a name. So this is going to be for our users. We'll click Save. We'll open that catalog up, and what we're going to do is create a new test criteria. So we're going to find users, and we're going to be using Excel as our execution type. We'll come into criteria, and we need to say what Excel file we want to use. We're going to use the Gherkin data one we were just looking at. We can specify what columns we want to output. Here we're going to output the URL, we're going to output the username, and we're going to output the password. And we're going to query this data based on the environment. So given an environment, return me a URL, a username, and a password. We want to return one row of data, and we can give a default value here for the environment that we want to search. Let's go for development just to kick things off. We'll hit save, and we'll see that this has been created. The crucial piece here is we want to tick this box and expose it as a module so we can use it in Test Modeler. We now need to create a data pool. Once we have a data catalog defined, we can create a data pool. A data pool is used to perform the actual allocation and allocate it to a particular type of test. So to do that, we'll come back into allocation here, and instead of using catalogs, which are our lookup functions, we're going to come into pools, and we're going to create a new pool. We'll call this pool our users pool. And if we go to the drop down here, we can select the associated catalog we want to connect to. We'll hit save, and we'll open that pool up. And what we're going to do is create a new allocated test. So we're going to look up users. We're going to use the test criteria of find users. How many rows? 1. Do we want it to be unique? No. The input, we could give any value here we want to look up for the environmental data. We'll hit save. And here we have our first allocation created where we can look up different users which have an environment of dev. We're going to test that our data pool is working correctly. Now we have our pool, we're going to test it. Now if we take a look at our spreadsheet here, if we look up the value of environment with dev, we should get back this row of data, and that's essentially what our criteria is doing here. Given this criteria, find the associated URL, username, and password and return it. So if we run this under our pool, we're going to use Hopper here to execute. We'll see the job gets picked up. This is going to go away and do all of its various lookups, in this case in Excel, but it could also be looking up from SQL Server or any other data source. We'll see this is complete. If we press the back button, we go to result, what we'll see is that row of data that has been found by our lookup, and no surprises, it's come back here with the associated URL, the username, and the password based off of this criteria that we gave. Let's build a Gherkin model. Okay, now we've got an allocation pool set up and we know it's working, which is pretty crucial. We're going to come into our models and we're going to create a Gherkin model here. So we'll call this our user auth. We'll hit save, and we'll open up our model editor. And we're just going to start visually creating our Gherkin. So we're going to have a start block. We'll have a task here. And this task will represent the user enters the username. Okay, we'll then have another task. The user enters the password, and we will have another task in between, which is the user goes to the URL. And what we'll do here is we'll just connect these up and put them into an end block. So we're just creating a happy path model here, nothing complex, nothing advanced, and we'll just add some when blocks in. And maybe we'll just add a then block in here as well, where the user ends up authenticated. As so. And we'll just tag this as a then block. Now, if we come in here, we do a relayout just so it looks a little bit nicer. Let's do a generate. Let's go in and export to Gherkin. Now, if we take a look at the result here, which has come back, of little surprise, we end up with one scenario. Given the user goes to the URL that enters a username and a password, then the user ends up authenticated. And this is kind of our happy path model. Now, in order for this to work properly, we actually need our data from our data allocations to be able to consume in here. We're now going to embed our test data. Okay, so we're going to come into the right hand side and we're going to navigate to our data catalogs. You'll see in here we've got our users catalog, which allows us to find users. Now we're going to embed that inside here before we do anything. We'll hit import and it's going to ask us what different environments we want to put in. Now we're actually going to have this model generate 3 different types for us. So we'll hit model blocks and we'll add a custom rule. And we're going to have the 3 different ones. So we'll have dev, which is obviously dev. We'll have production. And we'll also have UAT. And we'll hit save. And that adds our different users in here that we're going to go off and find those users. Now we'll have we'll change these blocks here to embed our different data. So the URL. And this is crucially going to come from the allocations that we do. We'll then have another one here for the username. We'll have a final one here for the password. Now, if we take a step back and have a look here, this blue block is going away and calling our allocation to go and find our different users. So we're putting in an environment, and we're going to return out the back here a URL, a username, and a password variable. And those are what we have embedded inside our Gherkin blocks here, where we say the user goes to the URL, it's going to dynamically use that URL, username, and password from the lookups that we have going on here. Finally, let's export our Gherkin and take a look. Now the final piece is to come in and generate our scenarios. And what you'll see is that we've got 3 here with data tables associated. Now, if we come in and we do an export to Gherkin, what you'll see is there's a test data tab. We're not going to use dynamic data, we're going to push out static data. We're going to select the allocation server we want to use, and we'll select to push this into our users data pool, and we'll hit execute. Now what this is going to do is go away and prepare all of our test data. And it's then going to generate the different Gherkin scripts based off of this data that it's made and found for each of these 3 different paths and scenarios we've got. So we'll leave this a second just to go through and finish. So we'll see this is finished. If we download our feature file and we take a look, what you will see here is we've got our 3 different instances. And for each of these we've got the UAT, we've got the production, and we've got the development data coming through to our scenarios based off of the different routes that we go down. We're injecting the different data in. Now if we come back here and we look at our allocation and we go to our pools and we look at our users pool, what you'll see in here is we have 3 different pools which have been auto created by Modeler as part of that allocation process. And we could come in here and we could look at the different data that is produced for these as so. Thanks for watching this video. Visit testmodeler.io to start your free trial today.